Ladies and gentlemen, if you want something you've never had, you must become someone you've never been. That's not just a catchy phrase, it's the truth. Greatness isn't something you stumble into, it's something you grow into. But growth requires a trade, and the trade is this: your old self for your future self. That old self, the one who makes excuses, delays action, avoids discomfort, and settles for just okay. That version of you cannot come with you where you're going. Growth requires a trade. It always has and it always will. You don't become more without giving up something you've outgrown. That's the deal. If you want to grow into a better version of yourself, more capable, more focused, more successful, you have to leave something behind. It might be a habit, it might be a mindset, it might even be an entire lifestyle, but you can't keep everything the same and expect things to change. Nature doesn't work that way, and neither does life. Think of a seed. To grow into a tree, it has to stop being a seed. It doesn't upgrade its old shell, it breaks it. It sacrifices the form it once had to embrace what it can become. That's how growth works. In life, we carry around identities that served us at one time but eventually limit us. We say, "I'm just not a morning person," or "I'm bad with money," or "I've always been this way." And those statements become self-imposed prisons. But here's the hard truth. If you want to break out, you have to be willing to trade those comfortable stories for new ones, ones that might feel awkward, uncertain, or even scary at first. That discomfort is the price of growth. The reason many people don't grow isn't because they don't want to. It's because they aren't willing to trade what they have for what they say they want. You can't trade excuses for excellence and still hold on to both. You can't trade procrastination for productivity without giving up the habits that waste your time. You can't trade emotional immaturity for emotional strength unless you're willing to face the truth about yourself. The trade is always there, and it's always fair. What you give up is holding you back. What you gain moves you forward. What makes this hard is that the things we're asked to trade aren't always negative. Sometimes it's comfort, sometimes it's control, sometimes it's even relationships that we've outgrown, and that's where the trade gets expensive. But you have to ask yourself, is staying the same worth more than becoming the person you're capable of being? That's the question that separates people who grow from those who don't. The people who grow have simply decided that who they can become is worth more than who they've been. It's not about perfection. It's not about never slipping back. It's about commitment, a commitment to make the trade, daily, weekly, year by year. Growth doesn't happen in one giant leap. It happens in small trades made consistently over time. The moment you become willing to let go of the old self, the outdated identity, the weak habits, the limited thinking, that's the moment growth begins, because growth isn't free, it never was, but the return on that trade. It's priceless. Greatness demands discipline over comfort. That's the law, not a suggestion, not a motivational quote to make you feel good. It's the underlying principle behind every truly successful life. You cannot step into greatness while clinging to comfort. Comfort is the enemy of progress. It keeps you warm, satisfied, and still. Discipline, on the other hand, demands effort, intention, and the willingness to do what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. And that's the real cost of greatness. Most people never achieve greatness not because they're incapable, but because they're unwilling to be uncomfortable long enough to earn it. They want the rewards, but not the routine. They want the praise, but not the practice. They want the results, but not the repetition. But that's not how this works. You don't get to cheat the system. Greatness is not given, it's reserved. Reserved for those who consistently choose discipline when comfort is calling. It's not about one big decision. It's about thousands of small ones. Wake up early or hit snooze. Eat for energy or eat for escape. Work on your craft or scroll through your feed. Those are the real battles. Not once, every day, Discipline isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's doing what's necessary even on the days you're tired, uninspired, or unnoticed. And that's hard. Comfort will always offer a softer option. It'll tell you you've done enough today, or you deserve a break, or no one will know. But greatness knows, you know, and that knowledge is what separates winners from wishers. Comfort wants you to take the easy road. Discipline forces you onto the narrow path. The narrow path leads upward. The easy road circles in place. Here's the thing. Comfort feels good in the moment, but it robs you over time. It takes your edge, your urgency, your clarity. Discipline feels hard in the moment, but it pays you in confidence, in progress, in transformation. One path feels good now and costs you later. The other costs you now and rewards you later. But make no mistake, you will pay a price either way. The question is, will you pay the price of discipline or the price of regret? Choosing discipline is choosing long-term gain over short-term ease. It's choosing to sweat in silence so you can shine in public. It's saying no to distractions, temptations, and old patterns, not because you're better than them, but because you're aiming for something higher. Greatness doesn't show up for people who are interested. It shows up for people who are committed, people who are willing to trade their comfort for consistency, who build habits, routines, and systems that support their goals instead of sabotage them. In the end, greatness doesn't ask, were you talented? It asks, were you disciplined? Because talent is potential, but discipline is power. It's what you do repeatedly, relentlessly, intentionally that shapes your future. Comfort might keep you the same. Discipline is the only path to who you're meant to become. And that's the real demand of greatness. You must outgrow excuses, not manage them, not justify them, outgrow them. Because as long as excuses have a place in your life, greatness won't. Excuses are the language of limitation. And the moment you allow them to speak louder than your responsibility, you stop growing. Everyone has reasons. Everyone has a story. But the people who rise, the ones who build, lead, and become are the ones who stop using their past as a crutch and start using it as fuel. Excuses are clever. They wear disguises. They often sound reasonable, even responsible. I don't have enough time. I wasn't raised with the right opportunities. I'll start when things calm down. It's not the right season. But here's the truth. Life rarely hands you perfect conditions. And waiting for them is just a strategy to stay the same. If you're waiting for a smoother path, you're not really committed to walking the one you're on. Greatness doesn't ask if you were dealt a fair hand. It asks if you played it well, and playing it well means refusing to let your circumstances decide your ceiling. There comes a point when you have to confront yourself. You have to look in the mirror and ask, am I making progress or just making excuses? That's a tough conversation. It strips away blame. It cancels the temptation to point fingers. It reminds you that growth doesn't come from external validation. It comes from internal accountability. When you outgrow excuses, you stop negotiating with your potential. You stop explaining away why you're not further along, and you start showing up differently. Excuses are seductive because they let you off the hook. They allow you to stay comfortable, to delay action, to protect your ego. But what they also do is steal your future. Every excuse is a small agreement to stay stuck. It's a quiet permission slip to remain average. If you make enough of those agreements over time, you won't even notice that you've built a life inside a box of your own limitations. But the people who do something significant, who live with impact and purpose, they don't have fewer challenges. They just refuse to let those challenges become permanent justifications for playing small. Outgrowing excuses isn't about never failing. It's about refusing to let failure define you. It's about taking ownership of your time, your energy, your choices, even when things don't go your way, especially when things don't go your way. Because that's when character is built. That's when momentum is earned. It's easy to show up when it's easy. The real test is how you show up when it's not. The moment you stop believing your own excuses is the moment you take your power back. That's where the shift happens. That's when progress starts to feel possible again. Because when you no longer allow your story to be an excuse, it becomes a source of strength. Growth begins when you decide that you're bigger than your reasons, louder than your doubts, and stronger than your past. And that's the day excuses stop running your life. Success comes from identity shift. Not from new goals, not from better tactics, not even from more motivation. Those things may help, but lasting success only happens when you begin to see yourself differently. You don't rise to the level of your ambition. You rise to the level of your identity. You will never consistently outperform the way you see yourself. That's why real change begins on the inside. Because until you change who you believe you are, you will always return to who you've been. You can set goals to become more productive, but if you still see yourself as someone who procrastinates, you'll eventually fall back into that habit. You can build a plan to get healthy, but if deep down you still identify as someone who just isn't disciplined, you'll find a way to sabotage your own progress. Why? Because behavior always follows belief. And if your internal identity and your external goals don't match, the identity wins every time. Your actions will always try to stay in alignment with who you think you are. That's why transformation requires more than action. It requires ownership. You have to claim a new identity before the results show up. You have to say, I am the kind of person who follows through, even when the proof isn't there yet. You don't wait for evidence, you create it. Small, consistent actions reinforce the new identity. You don't become disciplined overnight, but each act of discipline confirms the shift. You don't become confident in a moment, but every time you keep a promise to yourself, you cast a vote for the version of you that is. Most people try to work from the outside in. They think if they achieve success, then they'll feel successful. If they get in shape, then they'll feel like someone who takes care of themselves. But that's backwards. You must work from the inside out. You must become it in your mind before you become it in your life. You must adopt the habits of the person you want to be, not just because they lead to results, but because they shape your identity. This shift isn't about pretending. It's about choosing to let go of outdated versions of yourself, choosing to step into the role your vision demands, choosing to act like the person your future requires, even when it feels unfamiliar. That unfamiliarity is a sign that growth is taking place, and the more you lean into that discomfort, the more natural it begins to feel. Eventually, the new identity isn't something you're faking, it's who you are. The truth is, success isn't something you chase. It's something you attract by becoming the kind of person who belongs there. When you change your identity, success becomes the byproduct, not the pursuit. So if you want to change your life, don't just try harder, start becoming, because once your identity shifts, everything else follows. Let go of temporary pleasures, not because pleasure is bad, but because what's easy now often costs you later. Temporary pleasures are the distractions that offer comfort in the moment but steal momentum in the long run. They're the quick fixes, the instant gratification, the feel good. Now choices that quietly pull you away from your vision. Success doesn't ask you to suffer needlessly, but it does ask you to sacrifice what feels good today for what builds value tomorrow. If you're not willing to let go of those short-term highs, you'll never reach long-term greatness. The human tendency is to seek comfort. We want the path of least resistance, the quick escape, the fast reward. That's how we're wired. But you can't build a strong life on weak choices. Scrolling endlessly, watching, sleeping in, overindulging. These things promise relief, but rarely deliver results. They leave you feeling emptier, not fuller. Every time you say yes to a temporary pleasure, you're saying no to something better. Your focus, your energy, your self-respect. And most of the time, you don't even realize it because those choices seem small. But small choices made consistently shape the trajectory of your entire life. Greatness is never accidental, it's intentional, and part of that intention is learning to say no, not just to what's clearly bad, but to what's deceptively comfortable. The things that feel good but cost you clarity, discipline, and momentum are the real traps. They don't show up with warning signs. They show up disguised as breaks, treats, or things you've earned. But if they take you away from the person you're becoming, they're too expensive. The price isn't paid in dollars. It's paid in time, in lost potential, in confidence drained little by little. Letting go doesn't mean you never enjoy life. It means you get clear on what matters more. You begin to value peace over pleasure, purpose over impulse, fulfillment over entertainment. You start asking better questions. Does this serve my future? Will this help me grow? Is this worth the trade-off? When the answer is no, you learn to walk away, not because you're being hard on yourself, but because you're being honest about what you truly want. It's not about punishment, it's about prioritization. Every person who has built something meaningful has made this trade. They've chosen to delay what's easy for what's excellent. They've sacrificed the comfort of now to build something that lasts, and you can't fake that. You can't scroll your way into discipline or binge your way into success. You have to earn it, and earning it means taking control of your impulses, mastering your time, and living like your future matters more than your momentary cravings. It's not always exciting, it's not always comfortable, but it's always worth it, because the strength you build by saying no to what doesn't serve you is the same strength that builds a life you're proud of. And that life, the one aligned with vision, purpose, and character, is never found in temporary pleasures. It's built in the quiet, repeated decision to let them go. Environment matters. People may need to go. Not because you're better than them, not because they're bad people, but because your future requires a different atmosphere than your past. Who you surround yourself with influences everything. Your habits, your standards, your mindset, and your energy. The people in your life are either pulling you forward or holding you back. There is no neutral. You might not see it immediately, but over time, the effect is undeniable. If you're serious about growth, success, and stepping into your full potential, then you have to take a hard look at your environment. And sometimes that means making the difficult decision to let certain people go. Growth creates tension. When you begin to chain, when your thinking evolves, your goals get bigger, and your habits shift. It often exposes the areas where others around you have chosen to stay the same. And not everyone will celebrate your transformation. Some people feel threatened by it. Others will try to pull you back to the familiar version of yourself because that's the version they're comfortable with. They'll say things like, "You've changed," and they'll mean it as criticism, but that's the point. You're supposed to change. You're supposed to outgrow environments that no longer reflect where you're headed. The truth is, you can't rise in an environment that constantly reminds you of your limitations. You can't expand when you're surrounded by people who only see the old version of you. If you're the most motivated, the most focused, or the most driven person in your circle, that's a warning sign, not a badge of honor. You need to be around people who challenge you, not just cheer for you. People who stretch your thinking, not shrink your vision. People who inspire you to level up, not stay stuck. Letting go doesn't always mean cutting people off with anger or judgment. Sometimes it's just quiet distance, a shift in energy, a recognition that certain relationships have reached their season's end. It's not about bitterness, it's about boundaries, because the cost of holding on to the wrong people is often the delay or derailment of your destiny. You can't climb while dragging dead weight, and sometimes the weight isn't physical. It's emotional, mental, even spiritual. You have to protect your peace, your mindset, your mission. That doesn't make you cold. It makes you committed. You're not rejecting people, you're accepting your calling. And anyone who genuinely wants the best for you will understand that. They'll respect your evolution even if they don't fully relate to it. But those who resist, those who guilt trip, those who constantly pull you back into mediocrity, those are the ones you need to release, not because you don't care, but because you finally do. You care enough about your growth to prioritize it. You care enough about your future to protect it. And that starts with your environment. Because no matter how strong your intention is, if you're planted in the wrong soil, you won't grow the way you were meant to. Sometimes the most powerful step toward becoming your best self is having the courage to walk away from what no longer supports it.